A game about giant robots playing golf combined with a 90s anime art style in the cutscenes and comedic commentary during gameplay should have been a surefire hit. So what went wrong? My name is Graeldon, I'm on an impossible journey to review every Steam game in alphabetical order, and today we're playing 100-Foot Robot Golf. Let's begin. Every now and then you'll come across a set of words that simply demand your attention, and giant robots playing sport is pretty high on the list, right next to dinner's ready and that oddly specific sound cats make right as they're about to start throwing up. So I think you can imagine how confused and conflicted I was when I was reading the Steam description for 100-Foot Robot Golf the other night, just before dinner. Released on the 17th of March 2017 and developed and published by No Goblin, 100-Foot Robot Golf is a game that boldly asks the question, would giant robots be better at golf than humans? While the answer is a tentative yes, depending on how you measure it, the issue is that it's not particularly more entertaining to watch or even to play, which as you'll see is the unfortunate truth laying beneath everything this game puts forward. The title screen and opening music immediately give Super Sentai vibes with the stylish art and overly bombastic big band music that accurately sets the tone for the rest of the game. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit cheesy, and certainly doesn't take itself too seriously. Unfortunately, they also didn't take the settings menu too seriously, with many options requiring you to cycle through them rather than opening a selection pop-up. What is the point in measuring your volume levels in percentages if I can only cycle through them 25% at a time? I'd be happier if you called it off, low, medium, high, and max instead. The video settings suffer from the same design choice, but at least there are a decent range of customization options to make this playable on most machines, and the presentation style, while simple, fits with the theme of the game. In terms of gameplay, you've got two modes to choose from. Quick Play, which allows you to play solo or with up to 3 other players, real or AI, and Campaign, which is a series of custom rounds linked together with what vaguely resembles a story. I don't have any friends to play with, so we'll be focusing on the Campaign mode. There's a level select screen that allows you to replay previous levels to aim for gold medals, and you'll get a preview of the character you'll be playing, because while the campaign follows a story, there's not really a main character and you don't get to create a player for yourself. On the bright side, the characters and the cutscenes that play before and after each round are lovingly created in a 90s anime style. They honestly look fantastic. There's a lot of depth and detail in the art, and it's clear that a lot of care was put into each of the designs, with attention to the details that were prominent during that era. As for the quality of the cutscenes themselves, while the character designs are great, they exist as little more than animated GIFs with a handful of poses. They aren't exactly what I would call dynamic. Unfortunately, the voice acting is even worse. Now, to be fair, I get the sense that it's intentionally bad, like a bad English dub, but the problem with an intentionally bad dub is that it's still bad. Don't get me wrong, it's funny the first few times, the tone doesn't always match the situation, they emphasize the wrong words, the emotions don't match the character's facial expressions, or the voice just doesn't feel like it matches the character. But when each cutscene is several minutes long, we cross the line from running gag to torturous experience. That said, I think they were simply using the talent they had on hand, who were not experienced voice actors, and decided to lean into the bad dub angle of it all. So I'm not sure how much of it was intentionally planned from the outset, and how much of it was them working around limitations. The end result is the same. It would have worked as a one-off joke, but not for 30 minutes of cutscenes. And that's before we even touch on the absurdity of the plot itself, which honestly is a strength, if anything. In a nutshell, the last time a 100-foot robot golf tournament was held, the moon exploded. Many years later, they decided to get the gang back together for one last tournament. The cast includes a failed celebrity, an obvious villainess, a used car salesman who could pass for Detective Gumshoe's long-lost brother, a rich girl, a future NASA dropout and her mentor, a biotech scientist, the disembodied head of the third person on the moon, and 5 corgis in a mech suit. In order to meet the narrative trope quota, we also have a shadow organization, a romantic subplot, and, of course, a MacGuffin, which in this story is the Infinity Ball. Currently thought to be lost, it's actually hidden on the moon, and definitely totally unrelated to it blowing up in the last tournament, so the whole plot serves as an excuse to get back up there and recover it. So that covers the characters and the plot, so let's actually talk about the gameplay and determine if this is a good golf game or not. Spoilers, it's not. Let's start with the good stuff though. The robot designs are pretty decent, with a good level of detail and variety between them to make each model feel visually distinct. Sadly, they all suffer from a level of plasticness that makes them feel like model toys that have been scaled up, rather than something that's been constructed. But it doesn't bother me too much, as it feels like it plays into the stylized anime aesthetics. Every robot has access to the same golfing equipment: a driver for when you're on the fairway, a wedge for sand traps or the occasional underwater lava flow, and a putter for putting. While the game will automatically select the most appropriate club for the surface you're currently on, you can change them freely if you feel like making life harder for yourself. If you want to get technical, you can also change the arc of the shot between low, medium and high, and adjust the contact point of the ball to affect spin. Now, I say you can do all of these things, but at least as far as the campaign mode goes, you certainly don't need to. Other than occasionally changing the arc to get up steep slopes better, I didn't ever feel the need to change anything other than where I was actually aiming, as it often defaults to targeting the hole as the crow flies, which sometimes puts you entirely off course. This all sounds par for the course, pardon the pun, when it comes to golf games, so why robots? Well, different robots have different mini-games to determine how accurate you are, which is great in theory until you realise that they all are essentially reflex-based mini-games. Probably more importantly though is that you can destroy the environment to make better paths for your ball. No, you can't destroy trees, so while you can destroy the environment, you can't destroy all the environment. And yes, there are pedestrians running around, and no, you can't crush them underfoot. But each robot does get a unique weapon, like rockets, or a laser, or a sword, which is also a rocket. You also get a special power move that charges up with each swing you take, but the abilities aren't explained at all, and I couldn't really get any of them to do anything meaningful. The one that I could tell was actually doing something was one that started up a disco party. I don't think it gave me an advantage in the game, but it was fun to use. Oh, but the robots can fly. It's useful for getting around because many courses are kinda lacking in land, and the flying is also lacking in animations. The robot just gets locked into a flight pose. There's no adjustments to the animation when turning or changing altitude, making you realize just how one-dimensional the entire robot gimmick is. Seriously, some robots don't even have thrusters to explain why they can fly. They just do through sheer willpower alone. Weirdly enough, I can only think of one purpose that the robots served that couldn't simply be substituted by characters with magical powers. You can use your body to block the balls of other players. You see, unlike regular golf, in 100-foot robot golf, everyone takes their turns at the same time, which on the one hand adds an actual element of fun and excitement to an otherwise fairly dull sport, but on the other hand, it makes the sport basically unrecognizable. Do you still win by taking the fewest swings? Yes, but also no. In general, placement on the podium is determined simply by whoever manages to sink their ball first. But in another twist and departure from the world of golf that I barely know, games are played in rounds of either 2, 3 or 4 holes, depending on whatever whims of the golf gods known as the marketing department feel will be the most interesting at that particular point in time. Have you ever seen golfers pick up a few blades of grass and then sprinkle them into the air to see which way the wind is blowing? Yeah, that's basically how the number of courses in a round is figured out. It's pretty similar to reading tea leaves, really. If by some miracle 2 or more players have the same score at the end of all the rounds, then the number of swings determines the overall winner. Or maybe it's the total time taken? I honestly don't know, and it's not explained anywhere, so your guess is as good as mine. But at the end of the day, none of it actually matters, because even if you come in last place at the end of the match, the plot will still progress. Because, reminder, you're not the main character, and nothing you do actually matters. Man, don't you just love playing games where your input is practically worthless? It's like watching a movie where throwing popcorn at the screen is encouraged, but not mandatory. The movie will play no matter what you do, and throwing the popcorn can add moments of brief enjoyment, but the movie would still continue even if you walked away. And that's the one thing games shouldn't do. Even visual novels require the bare minimum amount of player input, and that's certainly not what you expect from a golf game. If you're going to go to all the effort of making mechanics and systems and interactions, at least make using them mandatory for the progression of the game. Anyway, back to the body blocking thing I was talking about before that massive tangent. It's the one silver lining to come out of all of this nonsense, because I kid you not that when I say that using the body of a giant robot to block the path of an opponent's ball, sending them so far off course that they'll basically never reach the green, is one of the most enjoyable moments I've had in a golfing game, giant robots included or not, I honestly, truly mean it. This is elevated by the fact that AI opponents don't skip the cinematic ball cam, so if you can send their ball tumbling into a ravine, they are forced to stand still, frozen until the animation finally ends, giving you all the time in the world to perform your flying equivalent of a T-pose over to wherever your own ball ended up. With that out of the way, we're left with one thing left to discuss: the McElroy brothers. I'll be blunt, if you know who they are and you like their style of humour, you're probably going to overlook all the flaws and enjoy this game by default. If you don't know who they are, but you enjoy puns and dad jokes, then you're in the same camp. If you don't know who they are and are ambivalent about that style of humour, then their presence isn't really going to add or detract anything. The McElroy brothers fulfill the role of the commentators, delivering some opening lines at the start of each round, while the camera is doing its best Mario Kart opening sequence impression, and also they make small remarks after each shot. While some of these got a small chuckle out of me, the downfall of the implementation is that there simply aren't enough lines, so you'll be hearing lines again and again well before you've reached the end of the fairly short campaign. Seriously, it's only 3 to 4 hours long. We recently played a game called Never Give Up in one of the live streams, and that game threw unique line after unique line at a much more rapid fire pace than 100-foot Robot Golf did, and I think we only heard a single repeated line during the 30-minute session. That goes to show that it is possible to avoid the repetition, but it takes a lot of creative writing to do so. If you really enjoy this type of humour, they did add a bunch of jokes to the level select screen. There's an entire button that does nothing except tell jokes. I found this fairly early on, and even after beating the game, I still feel that it's a highlight, and trust me when I say that's not setting the bar particularly high. So yeah, the McElroy brothers are here, and they do their best to bring their charm and dad bod energy to the whole thing, but their best one-liners won't be enough to make up for the weaknesses of the other parts of the game. There are a few moments that stood out to me though, but before I go over them, I want to address the multiplayer mode. There is one, and it offers 4-player split-screen multiplayer with the same courses, characters, and rules as the campaign mode. As I said, I didn't have any friends to play with, but in theory, I think a round or two might actually be fun, especially after a few drinks. I think it won't last much longer than that though, and you'll quickly be moving on to other more interesting games. For me, one of the highlights was an optional level in the campaign that forces you to play as 4 characters at once, trying to sink all 4 balls in the fastest time possible. To me, this represents everything that 100-foot Robot Golf should be. Silly and chaotic, leaning into both the robot and golf elements of the game design. The other part that actually left me with a smile on my face was the secret ending. It's not really secret though, don't worry, because you get it by completing a bonus mission after finishing the campaign. The final cutscene shows the main cast of characters devolving into pure adoration for the team of 5 corgis, with the line, "Good dog," repeated over and over, including on the final splash screen as well. This tickled my funny bone, as it still holds its humour when taken out of context. So I posted a screenshot of it over on YouTube. I don't know what I was expecting, and why it wasn't this, but I was left with no recourse but to lean into it and pretend that it was exactly what I intended from the very beginning. So if you stumbled upon that post and it left you feeling concerned, I'm sorry. If it was the message you needed to hear that day, you're welcome. And for everyone else, you're a good dog. Sometimes you stumble upon a game that has all the right ingredients but in the wrong ratios. From the outside, it looks like it should be amazing, but in reality, you don't know how they managed to get almost every single component wrong. When something does work how you think the developers intended it, it feels more like an accident than the result of careful planning and skill. 100 Foot Robot Golf is that game for me. It has everything that it should need to be a fun, silly, and enjoyable game. If I had to take a guess, I think a combination of things happened. Firstly, I think they might have been overly ambitious and ended up having to make one too many bandaged solutions. They decided on an art style for the cutscenes, but didn't have access to voice actors, so they made the voiceovers sound like a bad dub on purpose, but they didn't change the script to match the energy. They wanted the destruction that comes from having giant robots trying to play golf on city-sized courses, but they didn't really know how to implement the destruction from a gameplay perspective, other than sometimes needing to knock down a building or two. They wanted the robots to feel powerful, so gave them special weapons, but didn't know how to work those into the gameplay either, so they end up being useless gimmicks 99% of the time. They wanted to shake up the slow golf formula with more fast-paced and arcadey elements, but wanted to keep the deeper levels of control and precision, forgetting that they're irrelevant when focusing on fast-paced gameplay. It's a game that feels forever at odds with itself, and I sense that they tried to wrap the whole thing with as many layers of humour as possible to disguise the flaws under the ruse of it all being intentional. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it, and it's just a mishmash of ideas that are great in isolation, but don't synergize well together. I applaud the ambition and mourn the execution. There are simply so many missed opportunities. To me, the biggest one comes from the robots themselves. Sure, having a diverse range of characters and their respective robots to play as is great and all, but do you know what's even better? Getting to build and customize your own 100-foot robot. Even if it's just to the extent of swapping out legs, torsos, heads, and arms, that would be perfect. The campaign mode even features a shop where you can spend medals for custom paint jobs, so you've already got a base to build a shop for currency from multiplayer matches where players can purchase additional robot parts. That said, the shop does need an overhaul as the interface is kinda woeful. The items are presented in horizontal rows by category, but the player navigates a categoryless vertical list. It's not exactly intuitive. I'm honestly struggling to think of a single aspect of this game that isn't flawed in some way. Some parts are certainly better implemented than others, sure, but it just leaves you longing for the game that could have been. I think a great example of this comes from the Steam store description that reads, "Play in cities, on the moon, under the ocean, and more." In this case, and more means mountains. That's it. They could have just been honest and written that, but they didn't. You could argue that it's just marketing, but often the simplest answer is the true answer. They ran out of ideas. At the end of the day, I'm glad this game exists because heaven knows that someone needed to make a golfing game that features giant robots, and it's only $14.50 dues. I just hope that someone else can take this idea and turn it into the brilliant end result that the devs thought they could make. So, with all of that in mind, my final score for 100-foot robot golf is 5 dogs in a robot suit out of 10. It sounds like a great idea, but the reality is more likely to be a jumbled mess of fur and saliva that wants treats, walkies, belly rubs, chin scritches, and for you to just throw the darn ball all at the same time. They're still good dogs though. Welcome to the end of the video. As always, thank you to all the Crusaders and Templar Knights for supporting the channel, especially our noble knights Azazel, Dados, Kartoffeljäger 3, Negi Malevolent, Chef _ and the Crabs. And an extra special thank you to our 5 Knights of the Holy Grail, Ashley Walks, Automatistic, Fuchs Card Expo, Freaky Feline, and Matey 8. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the membership options below, or just remember to like and subscribe, that really helps too. That's all for now, so if you've made it this far, here is a sneak peek of the next game. And until next time, take care.